our vulnerability from our heart and to show our feelings connects us more with people than we could ever imagine, and to never be scared of being yourself, never be scared of truly tapping into the things which make your heart sing.
Welcome to another episode of Bigger Than the Hustle podcast. And right now I've got a really interesting guy with me. We've crossed our paths recently on an intensive we were both on, and I reached out, he reached out, and we got our conversation, we got a time together, and we're here to share a little bit of wisdom, a bit of probably some craziness, and just some shares that we've lived in life. So I want to introduce him. His name is Dave. Hi, Dave.
Hi, how you doing? You okay?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I really appreciate the invite to come on as well. Thank you.
No problem at all. So I'm going to hand over the mic for you for the next 30 seconds. So if you could just introduce yourself and whichever way you want to do that, and then we can go into the conversation from there.
Oh, fantastic. It's always a pressure one, isn't it? Here's the pitch moment. So my name's Dave. I'm a professional coach based in the UK. I have come from a background in healthcare where I spent about a quarter of a century, which sounds like a really long time, working clinically as a nurse and a podiatrist. And I sort of transitioned into coaching about 3 years ago. I work with, at the moment, mostly healthcare business owners, but I'm moving more into working with other groups of people around, I suppose, mindset and life coaching and that kind of element. But for me, I'm really on a journey to move from being in my head to being in my heart. And those are the people who I seek to work with, the people who need assistance in doing exactly the same, because it's reaped huge rewards for me.
And when you you were saying you were in the healthcare area and then you've moved into coaching, what was it that helped you decide that this was the journey for you?
The simple answer is being coached. I had about 6 years ago, so 2015, I had one of those big life-changing events where your back is against the wall, and my wife, bless her, she threw me out. She threw me out of the house at the end of 2015, really because my behaviour was just unacceptable, and she said, "I've had enough of you. Get out." And she'd been doing some personal development. I then picked up the mantle of personal development and started to look more in the mirror. I started to look more at me and go, okay, the situation I'm in at the moment is not good. How can I save my marriage? How can I change me to, I suppose, to be able to be in a relationship with someone? And so I started down the personal development route, and that took me, it took me across bookshelves, it took me across YouTube videos, it took me across having conversations with people, and a friend of mine, Dan, who's a therapist and a coach. And then I ended up with a coach. I say ended up, I actually chose to have a coach. Ended up sounds like it was really passive, but I chose to make some differences to my business, and had a coach as part of that process, and started to get coached both on business and personally. And it took me a little while, but I realized that there were such benefits in changing the way your brain works and your mindset and looking more internally at yourself that I went, this is what I want to be doing for other people. I've got some stuff now which I can help other people with. And in 2018, I put my business up for sale. It was from one conversation with my coach at the time. He said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to coach more." And he said, "How can you do it?" I said, "Well, I could do less time in clinic, or I could sell my business." And it was that selling of the business which made a difference. And it was just that one phrase. Put my business up for sale the very same day, sold it, I think it was 6 or 7 months later. And that was the point where I kind of transitioned from being a clinical healthcare person with a business to being a professional coach with a business. So for me, yeah, the simple answer is coaching. It was a big event which made me look at myself very, very deeply, and then being coached got me into that space of wanting to coach and help other people.
And what I liked about that as well is that was your first, if you say, trigger points to sell your business, because you knew, if I'm going to put the time and effort and energy into something, I can't be splitting it so much to share. And this is an area which I'm in right now. So I have a business at the moment, and I'm considering walking down this path as well, purely from the conversations that have been sharing and with other people, etc. I think it's just so important that we can be authentic and vulnerable with another person that may not be someone within our own circle, friends, family, etc. But where it's almost like a sacred space, where you have a space where you can turn up without a mask, without a hat, without an agenda, and you're just there to help, grow, support, share, learn, challenge, whatever needs to happen in that moment in time. And that relationship I see almost sometimes is deeper than family and friends, because there's some agendas that can appear from a long time of being in someone's space. Not so much friendships, but I think family especially, I think that can be there. But coaching is a brilliant space, because I took on my own coach a few months ago as well, purely for that reason, just to be someone to just challenge my thinking about certain things and to give me a bit of insight as well as clarity about the way that I would like to move my life forward. And maybe, and I'm sure you do this as well, where you can see someone's potential more than they can see in themselves. And that, I can see potential in you, but you may not see in yourself, and likewise the other way around. And I think that's such an important relationship to have, where you can have those conversations. So I think that's really important. Now, you mentioned that you're moving, you started in healthcare and then you're moving into more heart-centered. What happened within the conversation to know that this is the area that you feel you're the strongest at?
That's a really good question. I think there was definitely a realization that business coaching is fine, and I have no problem with helping people around the business. If you want to talk about marketing, I did a lot of that in my business. If you want to talk about the systems and processes in a healthcare business, fine, I could talk about those kind of things. But what I realized was that my business became successful and got sold not because of the systems and processes I put in the business, but because of the change which came in me. And the analogy which has just jumped in my head is it's children. If you have children don't want to eat broccoli, they want to eat chocolate. So you have to find a way of being able to give them broccoli, but in the guise of chocolate. Now you can mix it up. You can have broccoli, chocolate flavored broccoli, and it's that balance between giving people what they need versus what they want. So, I work with people who want business coaching. They want their businesses to be better, and actually, as part of the conversation, it's about helping them to be better and changing the things which are going on in their minds and their past and all that other stuff. What's really interesting around that is how I then found that actually the business coaching element was quite boring, and gravitated away from it and gravitated more into kind of the heart-centered stuff. And that's probably been the biggest thing for me, was finding that I wasn't enjoying the conversations around business coaching. I was enjoying the conversations where people were going to places which were really important to them, going to places of massive vulnerability. And, those spaces you talked about where they can share and they can come along without their armor on makes a huge, huge difference. And that was what was exciting for me.
And I think what's really important as well, moving those conversations forward with other males, with other men as well, because again, there's a whole new different conversation we can have for a different day, whatever it is. But it's that space where, it's that space where that we as men can be vulnerable and authentic with each other. And I think that's really, really, really important, especially now, especially in the mental health space we're in. And I know there's a big agenda right now in terms of what's going to be the fallout of COVID. We have the COVID, which is the health part of it, but the mind space and the fallout. Because I know even within my own children, my own daughter struggled a lot during this time of separation from friends, from systems, from things she's seen as normal. And I know a lot of people in my life around me have struggled with it as well. So it's really important that you've chosen this path, because I think it's a more important conversation when we access the human within whatever it is of their environment, the human within the entrepreneur, the human within the dad, human within the brother, whatever it is, Yeah. And that's by having these conversations, right?
Yeah, 100%. And actually, for listeners of the podcast, I'm nodding so much my head might fall off at this point. It is, I left the NHS in 2015, not because I didn't enjoy my job. and I didn't enjoy the team that I was working with. I was a team leader and working 3 days a week, running a couple of services. I loved the challenge, but something flipped in me, and I realized that I couldn't change the system. And I was seeing people who were just drastically unhappy, and instead of being able to care for people and do the job which they signed up for. Sounds as cheesy as anything, you go into healthcare to care for people. It's it's kind of Ronseal, isn't it? It's in the name, health and care. But people were just getting caught up in, I suppose, in systems and processes and tick boxes. And I just went, I don't want that. I'm losing myself in this process, and I don't want that. And for me, how many other people are in that place that they have lost themselves within the job or the role or the organization that they're in, and they're just completely unhappy. Completely unhappy, because that's where I was. It's no surprise to me that in 2015, when everything changed, that was me leaving the NHS and me finishing my master's degree and changing my business structure and getting coached myself. Everything happened within that whole space. So, and I know there's other people out there who are like it. And the point about men is spot on as well. Yeah, absolutely spot on. It's an area where men need conversations, whether it's with other men or whether it's with women or whoever they choose to have, where they can be vulnerable and they can address those things. Yeah, so much in that. I'm nodding hugely on that one, hugely.
Because I think vulnerability, that the word itself for me is, first of all, is quite scary, actually, in terms of what do you mean? Like you share and you be honest and you don't wear this thing that we've always seen, historically. Like I even see it within my dad and my uncles and the people that I looked up to. There's very few times that you would see the behind the curtain, where actually, I'm struggling with this. And it's so important for me now, especially with my kids, with my son, for example. He see it, I'll tell him, I'm only human. I don't know all the answers, but I'll try. All I can tell you is I'll try. That's all I can do. I don't, sometimes it may work and sometimes it may not. But the bottom line is, my intention is always for the best for you. Doesn't mean that you're going to like it. It just means that you have to just remember that I'm trying to do what's best for you, Yeah. And as a 10-year-old, he gets it to a certain point, but then he's like, okay. Hopefully subconsciously stuff's going in, that's my
10-year-olds do some really interesting stuff. My youngest he's just about to turn 11. In fact, he turns 11 next week, so a week after the recording of this. And he actually, bless him, he's on half term this week, and earlier this week he said, Daddy, he said there's a story about 2 Buddhist monks and a lady crossing a river. He said, can you remind me of that story? And it's a story I've told him. And the short version is two Buddhist monks on a pilgrimage come to an overflowing river. Lady needs to cross. Monks aren't meant to, interact with females, let alone lift one up and carry one across the river. And the older monk, the more senior monk, does just that. Get to the other side. Lady goes down. Thank you, she says. 2 monks go on their travels. And about 4 or 5 hours later, the younger monk's seething, and he's like, I've got to say something. He said to the older monk, and the older monk said, what? And he said, well, we're not meant to interact with females. And you picked one up and you carried her across the river. And the older monk goes, yes, I did. He said, and I put her down 4 hours ago. He said, you're still carrying her now. And it's kind of a really good lesson around primary and secondary experience. But my 10-year-old, almost 11, pulled that one out of the bag the other day and said, that's one of my favorite stories. So the things which you kind of, you are willing to be vulnerable about, and the conversations you're willing to have, they do have an impact on your kids. Even if it's not a big shift or a change at this point, it kind of gets weaved into their development, and they take it with them. And my 13-year-old's done it before. He's pulled stuff out of the bag, and he's schooled me on things when I'm having moments when my mindset's not good, and he's brought things out which I've said to him before, and it's like, yeah, you're absolutely right. So yeah. It's interesting. It's really interesting how it all rubs off when you choose to go to that place.
Yeah, and it's what was quite nice, David. Do you know when you actually hear it back and you're like, "Shit, that actually went in."
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because at the time it was like a big blank stare, or I'm not listening. You're my dad. I'm not meant to listen to you. And then it's little things come out, and it's like, oh, okay. Not to have any badge of honor, but it's like actually there something is going on. It's like my wife she's a fitness professional, so she works with prenatal, postnatal ladies, helping them, deal with birth and coming out the other side, etc. All these things. And I'm sure she does more than that, but I know she does. But so we built a gym in our house, and me and my wife generally train most days, if not every day, or stuff like that. And my daughter is adverse to training, so she's like, I see you all the time, I don't want to do it. And my son, he likes it, and we go out for bike rides and things like that. But it's their analogy about 2 months ago was say no to sport. That was their thing. Say no to sport. just do right. And it's funny because now there's certain things that they'll do. They'll say, we'll go and do some boxing. Daddy, can we do some boxing? And I'll say, yeah, fine. Or we'll do some running. And I'm like, I've never heard them actually saying it, but now because we just continue. Whether you want to come with us or not, we'll continue doing this. And I'm sure that, because I want to create that as a normal environment within our home. That's normal. So when you go out into the world and you see it's not, for you, it might still be normal that you want to do something like that, So those actions things are really important for me, just living my life by actions and whether my words hear them or not, but my actions are seen all the time. And hopefully that clicks in somewhere along the line.
I think it's the butterfly effect as much as anything. It's that, and we talked before in clip record. Measuring the effort, not the outcome, and talking about gyms and things like that. My oldest lad is at the same age that I was when I started going to the gym, and the gym for me was a way of my dad saving me from destroying the family as a teenage boy, and a very tall, very, very big teenage boy as well. And even now, I go to the gym. Where are we now? 13. I'm going to work this out in my head. 35 years later, I still have a gym habit and a gym practice, which actually keeps me on the straight and narrow in more ways than I can imagine. But that's from my dad kind of taking me to the gym as a teenager. No expectation, just right. Let's go and do this. You can only do what you can do with your kids, and again, you can only do what you can do with the people you work with.
Yeah.
You introduce things to people. It's an invitation, and the word invitation is one which comes up in coaching a huge amount. You invite people to try something because there's no attachment to whether they do or whether they don't. But if they have a go at it, it's amazing what can come from it.
And also the thing that really sort of resonated with me, it's the work they put in. It's you can do so, but you're only going to get out what you put in, and that's helped me so much, especially when I started playing piano 3 years ago. Is that the teacher? So I'd have a lesson every week for half an hour once a week, but then every morning I made a point. I said my disciplines can be every half an hour. Every morning I sit down and play for half an hour. Every morning, and then on the weekends I play 1 hour and just practice. And then as soon as that half an hour's over, stop. And that was the end of the practice. And every week I turn up to lesson, and he goes, "You're moving really well because I can see that you're putting in the effort outside of class." He goes, "I have students that come for class, do nothing, then come for class, do nothing, and then think they're not actually, there's nothing happening, they're not progressing. What energy are you putting in outside of this lesson? I'm just here to guide you. The rest is the effort you put in to that time." And I think a lot of life is like that, isn't it? It's a lot of life is what you put in when no one's watching or in the dark, right?
Yeah. What's the phrase? How you do anything is how you do everything. And there's so much in there which resonates with me around consistency and showing up every day to do something, no matter how small, and the compound effect. And you can take that principle and you can stick it on every part of life, from playing the piano to, there's a bass guitar in the corner of my room. Am I putting the practice in? No, which is why I'm not very good. But and to money and investing, to coaching, to running a healthcare business or a gym or a fitness business. So many, you can apply these things in so many different ways.
And it's the things you do when no one's watching, right?
Yeah, you don't want to know about the things I do when no one's watching. That's the X-rated version of this book. That's
after midnight, right? That's after 12 o'clock.
That's after the watershed. That one is. So. But yeah, it's and in fact, joking aside, although I don't often not joke, but I suppose it's the things you do when you're on your own to show yourself.
Yeah.
It's the lessons you're teaching yourself. And it was interesting. I had a really interesting conversation with one of the guys in the gym this morning, Simon, who he jokes that I'm in there more than he is, and I go in every day. And we were chatting and we were talking about our past, and we were talking about our childhood and things we get up to in our late teens and our early 20s, which is drastically different to what we do now. And we look for ideas in other people. You know, we go on Facebook, we go on social media. We're looking for other things outside of us to kind of learn from, and that's great. But actually, if we turned inwards and looked at the stuff which we did, and we learned from our own mistakes, we learned from our own successes, and we recorded those, that's the stuff which we do when no one else is looking. That's the stuff which we do to show ourselves. And I think we spend far too much time looking outward rather than looking inward. And that's a big part of the work which I've been doing on myself and with my coaches is looking inwards and having faith, actually, that stuff inwards will give you something. Very, very interesting journey to go on. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't do it because they think their story's boring, their life's boring. But there's so much to be learned by that. You know, what do you do when no one's looking? What do you do when there's no external stimulus to do something? Do you do it anyway?
It's someone asked me that question. They said, if you woke up tomorrow and there was no one else on the planet apart from you, what would you do?
I'd have a lion for a start. Do you know?
That's really interesting.
Well, that's almost like the what's the Will Smith film? I can't remember the one where he's the only man left alive, and it's I forgot the name of the film now. I read the book, and the book is fantastic. But yeah, it is that you're the last person on the planet. What would you do? You know, have hope, get up and carry on. I'd probably go out and find a really nice car from somewhere, and I'd have a really nice car because no one could stop me.
But it's funny because when they asked me that question, I almost presumed that everything else would be gone as well. So not just the humans, but all cars, all buildings. It would just be nature and me left. And I was like, okay, so then what would I do? That's how I interpreted it. I don't think that was the truth. I was like, that's how I interpreted it. Okay.
I go dystopia. You see, I go to nature overrunning cities and buildings, and some of the deepest, darkest science fiction things where no one else is left on the planet, and nature comes in and takes over again. Yeah.
So just talking about going forward now, what experiences have you not had yet that you would like to have in the future?
Oh, that is a really good question. That's a really good question. I think in terms of personal experiences, there's a lot around travel. Mm-hmm. I've traveled to a few places, but I've not traveled extensively. There's lots of countries that I would love to go to and experience. I'm not an adventurer in terms of, can we go on this, this bungee jump over a canyon? No, that's not for me. That's not the kind of thing I want. So from a personal perspective, I suppose it would be a lot of it would be travel. Mm-hmm. From a professional place, it would probably also be travel as well. I've done some speaking on stage, which I absolutely love, absolutely adore. I love the energy. I love I love the opportunity and the gift to be able to work with larger groups of people in that kind of space. So for me, one of the biggest things there is to take that forward and do more of that on a bigger scale. Mm-hmm. And then I can bring the travel in as well, because that's something I can do kind of all over the world. But yeah, there's loads. I'm when people say to you, what's your bucket list of 50 things? I don't have a bucket list. I've never actually sat down and written a bucket list. It's a really interesting question. There's my head's kind of firing off trying to think of other things, but I think that's one for me. That's one for me to sit with.
Travel and speaking on stage, because those two things they can be combined easily, can't they? If you think about it, that not right now, obviously, when the powers to be allow us to move in this direction. Yeah. But it's a nice space. so what you said there about speaking in front of audiences and being in front of a lot of people and just sharing a message, especially when you feel comfortable being in front of people. Because I know when I first used to give talks to students, so I still do what I did before lockdown, but I'd be in front of, say, 100 students at an enterprise academy, for example, talking about entrepreneurship, talking about things, whatever it is. And I loved it. First, I had the spotlight effect where I thought, all these people looking at me and look at all this. And then I realized the way I broke that down is that if I was sitting in the audience, it's only one person looking at one person. And it's just that repeated. It's just because we're standing in front of them, we think with everyone's looking at, but everyone's just having their individual experience of me, whatever that is. And as soon as I ground that in me, it just became so much easier, and I just became so much more natural at just being in front of people and just speaking. And when I found that space, again, like you, I loved it. Just love being able to just adapt as well. You know, we have in our head, we have probably a sister. Okay, well, I'll talk about this. And then you realize, actually, that's not clicking. Let me switch it and talk about this, and that might help and stuff. So, yeah. And I think that in terms of the human side of things, where they see you as a person, they see you as Dave as opposed to whoever you've come on stage as. I think that resonates really well.
Yeah, and my first kind of foray into speaking was when I started doing video in 2015 for my last business, my podiatry business, and started off on a bit. I did okay. I did videos every so often, but it was 2017 where I really kicked in. And between sort of May 2017, and probably early October 2017, I got enough traction that somebody approached me and said, "I'd like you to be the MC of our podiatry event in Manchester," which I did, 200 people. So I got to MC this event. So for me, it was going from not really being known by people to actually being on stage in front of 200 people. And then I got approached to speak at some events the following year. And I suddenly went, I better get better at this speaking thing then. And went and actually did a public speaking course, which I loved. And the big thing in the public speaking course for me is that I prepared this amazing speech talking about the Chimp Paradox. You know, I was deep into my personal development. I even had this cuddly toy chimp, which is currently still in the house somewhere, and he's called Colin. And I was going to put him on stage, and I was going to talk about my chimp. I was going to talk about this part of me, which is always fearful and always looking out for me. And I went, no, that's the wrong story. I have to tell the story about why I got into personal development. Yeah, the risks of my marriage, my anger, all of these things. I have to do this on stage. And that was the talk which I gave. And I gave it on a stage in Birmingham, probably in front of about 40 or 50 people. But the two key people in the audience were my mom and dad. And so it was being very vulnerable in front of your own family. And I loved it, absolutely loved it, and realized that there was such power in being able to stand on stage and being able to tell a story and being able to be vulnerable in that arena. Mm-hmm. And I love that. And when you do that, you give people permission to do it for themselves in whatever format works for them. So for me speaking it's great, and it's been a real challenge over the last 18 months with COVID that I had some speaking gigs lined up, and I've been doing some virtually, but I haven't been able to do that physical stuff where you're on stage feeling the energy of people. And that's the bit I love. Yeah, I love that. You can tell from my voice, I really, really enjoy that. And we're back. The first event that I think I'm lined up for this year is the one I spoke at first of all in 2017, the one I emceed. I'm actually one of 3 co-hosts, and there's going to be 1,500 people there. And I did the same show as one of 2 co-hosts 2 years ago. And it's an immense event. Love the energy. It's great fun.
Brilliant. I can already see you looking forward to it. So I wish you well on that. And what was quite something that you said that touched me just then was that when you had your mum and dad in the audience and you were sharing a lot of things they may not have known. They may have known within, but not intellectually, like until you share, because they see your actions, they see, how you are, and they know if you're not in a good space and you are in a good space, and maybe not be by directly asking you, just the way you are. They, our parents know us well, right? Now, even when I started this, there's a lot of stories that I've shared about my upbringing, about, just conversations that I've had that my dad's listened to. And it's interesting because even our relationships change just by hearing me speak so authentically just about my life, in terms of how things have happened to me. And it's funny because even the people I know, that these are people I know personally, not through this, but they're the ones who listen, and even the conversations between us have changed because they see that I'm not that person that I was before, where a high level conversation about stupidness really hits me. I know I can do that, but what I do like is just going, under layers. Let's go 2 or 3 layers deep, and let's just be real people, because that's where, for me, the magic is. Where we can share our stories authentically without thinking we have to be something, but we are just who we are. And I like it when someone else is in front of me and they're sharing the same way. That's where I know there's something happening here, as opposed to the what are you doing tomorrow, what did you do yesterday, all those in that. I switch off to those quite quickly.
Yeah, I mean, engaging speakers, engaging social media posts, engaging personalities. We all have people we're drawn towards, and it's very easy as well in a world where it's all noise. There's so many. You have to be a discerning consumer of information now. One of the things I talk about a lot with my clients is around how they manage the knowledge which comes into their life. We have a fear of missing out. We have a fear of missing information. And I quite often say to people, well, if you're going to bring information into your life, that's great, but what are you going to do with that information? If it's not going to be part of what you're doing and you're not going to create something from it, do you need to know that?
Yeah.
So it's always interesting as well. And if you find a speaker who can give you information which is useful and valuable and deliver it in a way where you resonate with it. And you connect with it. That's where the fun stuff happens.
And my wife says too many people are into shelf development, not self development. Read the books, take knowledge, and do nothing with it. I think I've switched now to. I have a few books that really work with me in terms of I can pick them up anytime, open a page and it reads, and I now just keep that next to my bed. And when you say read, I just read, because I've read one book probably 4 times, and every single time I read it, I pick something else up from it because I'm in a different space, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I don't need more books now. I just need to just go deeper within a few, and I know it just keeps hitting the right boxes every single time with whatever I need to hear or need to read at that moment in time. And it's like going deep, isn't it? Rather than going wide, going deep.
I think, that's one of the key things. I mean, I'm guilty of shelf development. I love books. Someone recommends a book to me, I'll probably order it and I'll probably read it at some point. And I have so many unread books, it's unreal. I think a lot of the self-help style books, the personal development books, they talk about the same thing but in a different way. and if you read enough of them, you get a thread. It's almost like a flavor. It's like dipping a tea bag into water. You leave it in there long enough, it colors the tea, it flavors the tea. And I think if you hang around literature which is designed to get you to think and develop and grow, you'll find the flavor which works for you. Some books will leave a bigger imprint than others. Some books will not leave an imprint at all. Some books you'll read 2 pages and go, no, that's a coaster, or I'll give that to someone else. But yeah, it is finding the books which resonate with you, and also it's what you said then about, you read a book 4 times and each time you get something different. That's like you never step in the same river twice. Yeah, the first time you read the book, you are this person. The second time you read the book, you're a different person. The third time, an even more different person. And the fourth time, you're someone completely transformed. And everything you read is what you need to hear at that point, or what you're looking for at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something just clicked to me just then. Just when you just said that was. I read this book. So Chimp Paradox. That's Steve
Stephen Peters. Yeah.
So I remember reading that, and that was like mind blowing for me at the time. I was like, this is so true that there's this thing in my head trying to control what's going on, and that was real eye-opener. And I think that was the gateway. So you didn't even talk about marijuana being the gateway drugs to everything else. I think that Chimp Paradox was the gateway book for me to open up so many different conversations about myself and with other people. So that helped me. And then finding out that he's British as well, because I listened to the audiobook after that. And then I thought, yes, because I like that. I did like that, So just something that I was thinking about just when you were speaking just there. If you're, what is it that, what moments in your life have, and I'm talking about young Dave, you were talking about, 10 to 20, let's use that as a benchmark. During those times and moments you had with people, who was the most influential person in your life?
Blimey. That's a good question. My dad's a massive influence. Huge influence. He's been the one he's like the knight in shining armor. He turns up on a steed and saves me from myself at various points. And he still does it now at 75. He still turns up. And quite often, if I'm on a call and he happens to pop up to see the grandkids, then the door opens and he comes and says hello. So he's got no filter and he's got no boundaries. My dad, he's quite cool. So he's kind of a huge role model and a huge influence during that time. And then I would probably say that the other role models are various musicians from rock bands who sat in my ears and played music and fed me rock-based poetry from probably 14, 15 onwards. Because they accompanied me as I grew up. People talk about music being from their era. I'm kind of late 80s, early 90s. That's my kind of musical era. 83 to 93 would be 10 to 20. So yeah, a lot of my kind of influences would come from the musical world.
Yeah.
So many good bands from that time, and I could go down the dad route of going music today and what it used to be like and all of that kind of stuff. But it's what you find in the moment. So yeah, music was a huge influence for me. Yeah.
And if we talk about the present, what inspires you to be the best version of yourself?
Wow, that is a really good question. My children are a big influence. And I'm not a huge family man. If you ask me to list my values, my 4 top values, family's not in there. I have a bigger kind of family value in that I like people in general, and it just so happens I have 3 little ones of my own who come from my genetics. But they're a huge driver to do better, because I. Just like any parent, isn't it? You know this yourself. You don't want them to make the mistakes that you've made. You don't want them to almost waste the years that you wasted getting to a point. So yeah, they're a huge influence. And the other influence, and the other thing which tends to drive me now is the people I work with. I have and it is an absolute gift. It's a privilege to be able to spend time and space, holding space for people and them holding space for me, and seeing them grow and develop and become something else. And when I get that, it feeds into me, and I want to go and help more people. That is a really powerful thing as well. And something which, yes, you can get it in healthcare, and yes, you can get it in fitness where you see people transform, but in coaching, it's very, very different. It's transformation at a very kind of central and core level. And it's the ripple effect it has on other things.
And it's the transformation of the unseen, isn't it?
Yeah. And I talked about this on one of my lives the other day. It's the tangible versus the intangible. Coaching as a whole is pretty intangible. People come to you and say, well, what's going to happen to me? And the answer is, well, actually, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen to you, but I know from experience it's probably going to be good. At the same time, it's probably going to be challenging, and there's going to be times where you don't enjoy it. But 6 months, 12 months, 2 years down the line, you will feel different, and you will notice things where you can turn around and go, that conversation I had with you where we talked about this and I shared this, and I I examined this part of my past or my relationship with someone else made all the difference. And it's really hard to kind of show that to people unless you're telling stories, unless you tell stories of the people who you work with, anonymously, obviously, unless they're happy to have their story shared and put their name to it. But telling the stories of people who you've worked with makes a huge difference. But otherwise, yeah, it's a really difficult one, the intangibility of coaching.
Yeah. And we talked about the past, we talked about the present, now talking about the future. What skills do you still need to grow, master, or learn to become the next version of yourself?
I'm an Enneagram 6. If people go with Enneagrams, I'm not necessarily a believer in star signs. I'm a Taurus, which means I'm skeptical anyway. But an Enneagram 6 is someone who is always looking out for something else to learn. I'm always looking for the next thing, and I'm always looking for what I'm lacking. So for me, instead of focusing on what else I need, I have to be very, very, very intentional to turn it back on me and go, what do I already have which I can work on more?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily need more information. I just need more time with the information that I have and more experience with the information that I have. But I fall into the trap of everyone else. The volume of learning and skills is much, much better than, having a few core skills that you're really, really good at. And my view is that that's just not true, but I still fall into that same trap. If I had to specifically look at some core skills which I would like to gain, the one which jumps out a lot is NLP, so neuro-linguistic programming. The use of language as part of that process, and I've heard so many good things about it. And it's not something which I've actually kind of dived into. That would be something I'd focus on. But otherwise, it's improving what I already have and what I'm good at.
Perfect. Now, there's a couple more questions which I'd like to ask you, which would go a little bit deeper into the way you think and you as a person. So we're going to project now 100 years into the future, and you're at the last moments of your life. Now, you don't have enough energy to speak, but you have enough energy to write down 3 words. Now, these 3 words have resonated with you all your life, and by sharing them, they may help the people that are listening today. What would those 3 words be for you and why?
I would probably cheat and put 4.
Okay.
Just because I would probably write my 4 values down. So my 4 values are love, learning, freedom, and fun. And for me, because the values for me they're a great explanation of why I've made decisions in the past. So leaving the NHS was I wasn't having fun. I didn't have freedom. I wasn't learning. Why did I do a master's degree and spend 3 years, working on that? Well, it wasn't particularly fun, but it gave me the chance to learn. Why have I taught people and been in education? Well, because it gives me a chance to learn or to educate other people. So for me, it's about writing those values down to always say to people, these are my values and these are the things which have been with me throughout my life. Find your values and go with those, but always have fun.
Yeah.
If something's not fun, then you're probably doing it wrong or you're not doing the right thing. I know funny is very subjective, and different people find. I know accountants find fun in numbers. I don't, but that's cool. So yeah, for me it would be I'd write my values down. Yeah, love, learning, freedom, and fun.
Perfect. And I think the fun one is an interesting one for me because only over the last few years I think I've taken my life way too seriously, and letting go and just having fun with the process, I think is the muscle I'm trying to build in my mind, and I'm finding fun doing it as well. So I think I'm loving that, and the universe keeps giving that me in lessons. So you telling me today again, it's just reminding me to keep on that path because it's helpful.
It's interesting. It's interesting with fun. The thing I have to hold myself back on this, and I'm aware that I probably shouldn't hold myself back on it. I have a very dark sense of humor from my healthcare days, particularly working in A&E for 3 years. So I have a tendency to take myself to very dark humor, and I have to be careful that I don't vocalize that too much and have too much fun with it, because I will look for humor in absolutely everything. So many things I look for humor in. So yeah, it's. I think it can be a fine balance, but around the right people. The right people, your values are not a problem at all. They work beautifully. So,
and people who know your intention as well, right? The intention of which you're sharing as well. It's really important.
But I think there are still some people in the world who they would know your intention but still take offence to it anyway, because that's what people do. So yeah, it's a strange world. When 2021's a strange year. Yeah, it's a strange time where people seek out offence, forgetting that offence sits entirely with them, and they're entitled to have their offence, but take it somewhere else. Take it somewhere else. What was it? I can't remember. Was it now? Someone had a brilliant phrase with offence. So someone was having a conversation, turned around and said, that offends me," and they said, "Cool." They said, "So I'm waiting for you to make a real point." It might have been Stephen Fry said something like that. I thought that was a beautiful one. Yeah, but what's your point exactly? Yeah, that was.
Okay, so right now, this podcast is called Bigger Than the Hustle, and right now you're bigger than the world. So I've got a microphone that's connected up to 7.58 billion people on this planet. They can all hear you. They're all listening. They're all awake. They're all conscious, and there's no language barrier. If I can hand this over to you for the next 30 seconds, what would your message be to the world?
Ooh, that is a really good one. It would start off talking about how simplicity is a much better way forward than complexity, and how connection with others is the really important energy that we need to tap into, but particularly connection with ourselves. And being vulnerable is not a weakness. Being vulnerable is a superpower. And being able to share our vulnerability from our heart and to show our feelings connects us more with people than we could ever imagine. And to never be scared of being yourself. Never be scared of truly tapping into the things which make your heart sing.
Perfect. And at that juncture, Dave, I'd really like to thank you. Thank you for sharing in this conversation. Thank you for sharing this moment in time with me. I've always wanted the conversation just to be like this, where it's just two people talking about things, and we just, we're chewing the fat on life, on what we're doing. And I really, really enjoyed that. So thank you. Thank you the way you share. Thank you for the way you're coming into the world. Thank you for being so authentic, so vulnerable about everything that's happening, and trying to share your own scars and bruises to try and help and support all the people around you, to shine your light so they can shine their light for the people around them. So thank you for that. Just before we go, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Just thank you. Thank you for the conversation. That was an immense conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you for the invitation. I really, really appreciate that. So yeah, thank you.
No problem at all. So just before we go, I'd just like to say my name is Bhavik Patel. I'm the host of Bigger Than the Hustle, and a few thoughts to leave you with. Big energy leads to big thoughts lead to big ideas lead to big actions, and big actions lead to a big life. So keep thinking big. Until next week, goodbye.
And kind of as I've been saying as we've gone along, some setbacks are a lesson and they strengthen you. And you may not realise that until you're in a situation where you require that experience. But experience life and encourage others to do the same.